Good afternoon. My name is Adam Vaughan. I'm the parliamentary secretary for, to Minister Ahmed Hussen, who's the Minister for Families, Children, and Social Development, but for today's announcement, most importantly, the Minister in charge of CMHC, and of course, the key architect and lead on the national housing strategy, and it's an honor to work with them. So bonjour et bienvenue. And with that, just a quick note for the media who's tuning in for this important announcement. There will be a question and answer session right afterwards, after we make the announcement and the presentation. For those who are new to this digital feed and virtual press conference, the first thing you need to do is to click on the speech bubble, which is the icon in the top right-hand corner of the live video. This will launch the live chat area, and then go to enter some text in the bar that is labeled "Say Something," and then you hit enter. This will now bring up a window asking you to create a live stream account. Just enter your email address and reply to the confirmation email that'll arrive instantly, and you're all set to ask questions and chat with other viewers during the live broadcast. We'll repeat these instructions at the end of the presentation and give you a bit of time to log in and move forward with it. But in the meantime, let's begin with today's very, very important announcement. As I said, my colleague and the minister that I am responsible to and work with, Minister Ahmed Hussen, is here and is ready to make his presentation and make the announcement. Ahmed, over to you.
Thank you so much, Adam, for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I am in Ottawa on the traditional territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg peoples. It is, of course, a real pleasure to join all of you virtually, but especially my colleague and friend, Parliamentary Secretary and Member of Parliament, Adam Vaughan, who has been a very, very strong advocate for housing, not only for his constituents in Spadina, Fort York, but also for the entire province and communities across Canada. His leadership on housing is a big reason why we are actually able to make today's important announcement in Ontario. And I am really, really happy to join him this afternoon. I know that both of us are really looking forward to making this announcement. C'est une journée importante pour les familles de l'Ontario. Today is an important day for Ontario families. Uh, Adam Vaughan, Parliamentary Secretary Adam Vaughan, and I have been working closely with partners across the province, from municipalities to community leaders to stakeholders, to ensure that every Ontarian has a safe and affordable place to call home. When we first introduced the Rapid Housing Initiative in October of last year, thanks to Adam's work to push for a rapid housing solution and a permanent solution, a housing solution to address the housing needs of the most vulnerable in our communities. When we introduced this program, we knew that we were setting ambitious goals for ourselves. Mais nous savions aussi qu'il ne s'agissait pas de savoir si nous pouvions atteindre ces objectifs, mais plutôt quand nous le ferions. But we also knew that this was not about whether we could achieve those goals, but rather when we would achieve them. We decided to make our $1 billion investment as targeted as possible through two major streams. The major cities stream, because our cities and communities find themselves on the front lines of dealing with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, especially on housing and homelessness, and the project stream, to make sure that we address the needs of communities right across the country in ways that benefit them directly. Et nous savions que dans des temps de crise, les plus vulnérables de nos communautés sont souvent les plus durement touchés. And we knew that in times of crisis, the hardest hit individuals are often the most vulnerable people in our communities. Ce qui nous amène à la raison pour laquelle nous sommes ici aujourd'hui. Which brings us to the reason why we're all here today. J'ai le plaisir d'annoncer que notre gouvernement accorde un financement de plus de 75,2 millions de dollars pour soutenir la création de 301 logements abordables à travers la province de l'Ontario dans le cadre du volet projet de notre initiative pour la création rapide de logements. I am very pleased to join my friend and colleague Adam Vaughan, to announce that our government is providing nearly $75.2 million in funding to support the creation of 301 affordable housing units across Ontario through the project stream of our Rapid Housing Initiative. These units will support people living in precarious housing situations and those who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless, with over half of of the committed units going to Indigenous peoples and over one third of the units going to women and children. We look forward to announcing specific details about other important new housing opportunities under the project stream over the next coming few weeks. L'annonce d'aujourd'hui suit nos annonces historiques récentes en Ontario. Today's announcement comes on the heels of our recent investments here in Ontario. Through our other stream of the Rapid Housing Initiative, namely the Major Cities stream, we have announced the creation of nearly 800 affordable housing units so far, with more announcements to come. This means that in total, under this program alone, we see the creation of over 1,100 units across the province of Ontario. In recent years, we've also made a major investment with Ontario of $1.46 billion through the Canada Ontario Housing Benefit, which is supporting low income households across the province of Ontario with their rental needs. How? By putting money directly in their pockets to help them keep up with the cost of living and paying rent. This Canada Ontario Housing Benefit prioritizes households in need that are on or eligible to be on a social housing waiting list, and households in financial need living in community housing. This includes survivors of domestic violence and human trafficking, persons experiencing homelessness, Indigenous Ontarians, seniors, and people with disabilities. The Canada Ontario Housing Benefit builds on the Canada Ontario Bilateral Housing Agreement under the National Housing Strategy, which will provide more than $5.75 billion to protect, renew, and build more social and community housing, and support Ontario's priorities related to housing repair, construction, and affordability. Donc, l'annonce d'aujourd'hui est une autre étape importante en matière de logement en Ontario. So today's announcement is just another big step in the right direction in our ability to build more housing and ensure more Ontarians have a safe and affordable place to call home. This is what the National Housing Strategy is all about, providing a place for parents to raise their children without worrying about where they will spend their next night. It is about making sure women have the resources they need to stay safe and live prosperously. It is about ensuring a worker can go home at the end of the day and not be faced with the impossible choice between paying their rent and putting food on the table. Our government recognizes the unique housing challenges faced by Ontarians, and we will continue to make targeted investments to ensure that the housing needs of Ontarians are met. Ensemble, nous allons nous assurer que tous les résidents à travers la province de l'Ontario soient en sécurité aujourd'hui et continuent de prospérer pour les mois et les années à venir. Together, we'll ensure that all Ontarians are safe now and can thrive in the months and years to come by having access to a safe and affordable place to call home. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. A good day for housing as more housing is added, but as we often say, more to come because more is needed, and we're hard at work delivering just those sorts of results. And you'll see, hopefully, the impact of our work as it grows over the next few days and weeks as we move towards the budget. And with that, I will go back to the questions to the journalists. Again, if you go to the chat box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you can click on the speech bubbles, enter your name or your question at that point, and we will give you all a couple of minutes to log in to register your questions, and we'll be back with you in a few seconds as you register your questions for the minister. And with that, I'll leave you to contemplate the technology and focus your questions. if there are questions, we have CMHC staff here to relay the questions from one platform to the next platform, and I'll let Mark Salerno pose the questions, and we'll provide the answers. I think that's probably the easiest way to proceed here, as there seem to be questions now being logged in.
Thank you, Parliamentary Secretary Vaughan. What we can do while we're addressing those is, if you would like to pose, both of you, Minister Hussen, and we'll get a nice picture. And in the meantime, I'll turn my attention to the live chat. And we do have a number of questions coming in. Please just want to reiterate that this is intended for media questions only. And as such, it's not just an open chat function. Appreciate that. So once we're taking that picture, I'm going to turn my attention to the first questions. So the first question is from Ryan Kyle. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing a media affiliation. So Ryan, if you could follow up with that after, this way we'll know exactly which media outlet you're with. So the first question is, how are you weighting the resource investment regionally? How are you determining which geographic areas are getting resource priority?
The Rapid Housing Initiative was really, so there were two streams, as I said. The first stream of $500 million went to the top 15 cities in Canada that have the highest number of individuals experiencing homelessness. And those cities also have the highest severe housing need. And so it was evidence-based. It was done in consultation with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we flowed the first $500 million there for rapid housing solutions for those top 15 cities. The next the next 500 million was a project stream, and in that it was just basically we invited all the community organizations, nonprofits, Indigenous governments and organizations, other municipalities, provinces, everybody to just apply and submit their projects, and their projects were weighted based on their ability to build housing rapidly, meaning within 12 months. And also, they had to demonstrate that they were targeting one or more vulnerable populations to provide housing, and there was a scoring system based on a number of factors, and so that's how we proceeded on the project stream.
Thank you, Minister. We'll turn our attention to the next question, and I do want to once again ask Ryan Kyle, who'd posed that earlier one, if you could kindly share your media affiliation in the chat function. We'll turn to the next question. It is from Sharif Gobriel, who is with the Young Millennial News. Today's announcement is focused mainly on low-income individuals. Yes. What are you doing for the young middle class? They can't afford a home in the GTA area despite having good jobs.
Thank you. And before I answer this question, I want to also invite Adam Vaughan to jump in at any point for some of these questions. The question is right. We do the National Housing Strategy, and our housing approach is meant to deal with all the different housing needs across the spectrum of housing. And yes, this of course the Rapid Housing Initiative is targeting the most vulnerable. It's about housing people who need housing the most off the street and so on. But for middle class Canadians, we have a number of programs. One is the Rental Construction Financing Initiative, which is about making sure that we build more affordable rental units and mixed housing in Canada's large urban centers that face a lot of pressure with respect to rental rates. But we also have the first time home buyer incentive, which enables middle class Canadians who want to have access to their dream of home ownership. And the first time home buyer incentive helps with that because it's the federal government's push to contribute to Canadians' ability to be able to put down the down payment and reduce the mortgage payments, the amount of mortgage payments that individuals will be subjected to. So that allows more and more people to access their dream of home ownership.
Yeah, I think what's critical is the National Housing Strategy is focused on both affordable housing and housing
The
affordability.
affordability, yeah.
And I think that that's critically important to understand, that if you don't manage every element of the housing spectrum, it backs up into other problems in one sector will back up into other sectors. So, for example, the creating a strong bridge to home ownership, in particular for first-time buyers, is critical, because that takes pressure off the rental market, which then allows us to either subsidize or redistribute empty units into the hands of those people that are underhoused, overhoused, or precariously housed. And so there's an ability to you have to manage both sides of that equation if you're going to get results in both sides of that equation. The housing crisis shows up on our city streets and our parks and our ravines and in shelters in ways that are extreme and very visible. But the pressure that first-time buyers are having, and their inability sometimes to, in certain markets, to access the right housing in the right location with the right household composition, is a challenge that we have to address if we want to sustain affordability in the rental sector. So, as the minister said, there are programs in place for that, but they don't. But today's announcement is focused squarely on those with the highest housing needs and those in the most precarious situations, because today's announcement is not just a housing announcement, it's also a healthcare announcement, making sure that those people are in safe and secure environments so that they can be sheltered properly and take care of themselves during a pandemic.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to the next question. This is from Mike Lecouteur, Global National News. Given how much debt Canadians are taking on, many experts are worried the current housing bubble will burst. So what is the government considering to cool the market?
Number of things. First of all, housing affordability and the increases in the price of homes is something that, of course, we're monitoring very closely, and it's something that we'll keep our eye on. Having said that, I just want to point out that the work that Adam Vaughan did very early in our first mandate that led to the creation of the National Housing Strategy was not just significant in the results, but it was significant in the fact that it brought the federal government back in the housing game. The government of Canada was absent prior to our government. So it brought federal leadership back into the housing issue, and it brought significant federal resources. And we've seen the National Housing Strategy grow from being a $40 billion strategy to now a $70 billion plus. So our job is to, of course, ensure that every Canadian has access to a safe and affordable place to call home. And how do we do that? We do that by investing through the National Housing Strategy across the spectrum of the housing market, whether it is dealing with people who need immediate and permanent housing solutions, and those who are experiencing homelessness, but also building more rental construction and building more rental stock in places where there's a lot of pressure to increase rental rates, the large urban centers, but also the National Housing Co-Investment Fund, which is about building deep, affordable housing for all Canadians. And so we'll continue to do that. We will monitor the market, and I believe the finance minister and others are also carefully watching that. And we have taken some significant steps. As I said, the housing affordability issue with the first-time home buyer incentive, but also monitoring some of the other aspects of the market that are leading to this.
Thank you, Minister. There is a follow-up question from Mike Lecouteur. Would the government consider a nationwide speculation tax or even increasing capital gains taxes on the sale of secondary residences?
We are not considering introducing a tax on residences and equity. That is not something we're considering. It is not something that we're going to do. It is. I can confirm that that is not something we're looking at or planning to do.
I think that the challenge with with the conversations and the analysis that surrounds the worry that's framed as a housing bubble often is that I remember being at a public meeting and somebody said, "Can you get the price of housing down by 10%?" And I said, I understand why that is seen as a positive thing for people who are trying to get into the market, but if you but hands up if you'd like to see 10% of the equity in your home suddenly disappear overnight, We know that Canadians rely on home ownership to secure their place in the economy now, but also as they retire. And so the measures we have to take around the impact speculation and inflation have in the private housing market, where 85% of Canadians get their needs met, have to be done very carefully, and they have to be done in concert with other financial tools. And that's why it's a better question to ask the finance minister as she moves towards the finance minister, she moves towards the budget, because we have to be very conscious of that, and we have to be very careful that whatever steps we take protect the investments Canadians have made in their homes, but at the same time create that bridge to home ownership, in particular for first-time buyers. So there are a number of policy options that are there, but as the minister has said, a capital gains change to capital gains tax on your primary residence is not part of the conversation and not part of the work we're looking at. But we are looking at the impact that speculation has in the market, and we're trying to understand what tools may be available to us through CMHC to assist the finance minister as she manages those very complex issues.
Thank you. We're going to move on. There's one other question, but I'm waiting for the media affiliation to be shared in the chat. That's from Tom Zed. In the meantime, I'm going to proceed to Jordan Press. This is a question posed to Minister Hussen. Do you have any concerns that redoing the first-time homebuyer incentive for places like Toronto will only fuel demand, drive up prices, and not improve affordability?
No, it is about ensuring that people have access to their dream of home ownership. There are people, as Adam Vaughan has said, there are people who are renting now who would love to have access to home ownership, and we're helping them get there. And when they do that, they do free up rental units for others. And so it's about moving people along and making sure that, and by the way, these are people who also meet other requirements like the stress test and other financial requirements that are needed to obtain a mortgage. We're just giving people a little bit of a hand up to make sure that they have access to their dream of home ownership.
And again, it's anything you do that's big and bold and looks easy. Somebody once said, hard questions rarely have simple answers that work. And so single sort of magic bullets just don't exist on this file. You've got a very complex set of regional housing markets, and you have global investment strategies, as well as other economic challenges that you have to balance. And so providing that bridge to home ownership is critical, and letting Canadians see how they can see themselves in a home that they own is a responsibility we take very seriously. But at the same time, if everybody who wanted to buy a home suddenly went to the market tomorrow, you'd have more inflation, and that's the concern that we also have to manage. And so it's trying to get it if I can use the Suez Canal analogy here, is trying to move that boat carefully, so that the canal is in place afterwards, but the boat gets through, and that other boats can follow it along. And I think that's the work that the finance minister is doing as she moves towards the budget. And in terms of speculation on speculation, I don't think you'll see us speculating today.
Thank you. At this point, we will address the question now by Tom Zed. He notes he's a concerned citizen. So, but the question I think is relevant considering the national housing strategy and its aims. So, with your permission, I'll proceed with that.
Sure.
How will we create enough affordable housing to keep up with increasing population? We do not have enough housing in Ontario, and rent prices have been soaring. So even people working full-time struggle.
I'll take a first crack at it, and I know Adam has something to say about this probably. So it is like we've always made it clear that yes, the federal government will play a lion's share and bring a lion's share of resources and play a significant role and leadership in affordable housing, but we can't do it alone, and we need other orders of government to also join us in this national effort to ensure that every Canadian has a safe and affordable place to call home. So national housing strategy will continue. We've been very ambitious. There are people who didn't think we could even achieve 3,000 affordable housing units rapidly with the Rapid Housing Initiative. Now we know it's going to be over 4,777 across the country. That's what happens when we're ambitious and we work together. And the reason why those units even increased is because the proponents were able to stretch those dollars, and they were able to get other orders of government involved. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us rowing together and rowing in the same direction to get Ontarians to have access to affordable housing. And so, as far as the government of Canada is concerned, we'll continue to remain ambitious. We'll continue to invest heavily. We'll continue to fight for more dollars, and we'll continue to reach out to other orders of government to join us in this effort to provide more housing for as many Canadians as possible. Over to you, Adam.
And this question once again illustrates why it's not as easy as presenting a binary choice of just simply demand and supply. When you build housing, it takes 2 or 3 years to realize the projects. Where you build it matters. We've seen communities where there's been a boom, and housing has become very expensive, and the market flocks to build, and then the economic activity slows down, and all of a sudden you have a lot of people with big mortgages in an economy that doesn't have salaries that match it, or even the job market that matches it. But you can't move the housing as the people move. We've also seen circumstances where you're building into the market, and while the market stays solid, patterns change and immigration patterns change, and selection of cities change. So there are a lot of variables that are at play, and housing as an asset is a fixed asset in terms of where you build it and how you build it and what price point you build it at. You lock it in for the long term as soon as you give it the green light. And so it's not just a question of population increases or a question of housing starts. It's also a question of what kind of housing you build, where you build that housing, how you subsidize or support people acquiring that housing, as well as how you set the system up so people have choices when circumstances change, because you can't move the house as the person moves, and people have a right to mobility, to acquire better jobs, for training, marriage, having kids. All of these elements will change the household composition, therefore the household needs, even though you've got a house built for a family or for an individual. So the complexity of the housing system has got to be respected in this scenario, and just talking supply and demand oversimplifies the equation that we have to reconcile.
So with that, there's one final question. It's follow-up from Sharif Gobriel. The government has spoken about a foreign investors tax in the past to avoid real estate speculation. It's widely known this has been a catalyst for higher prices. What is the status of this law?
I disagree somewhat with the premise of the question. There are a number of factors that have led to dramatic increases in housing prices, especially in Canada's major cities. I don't think it's only one factor. I think it's a number of factors. We have said that we will look at that, and that is something that the finance minister is looking at, and you'll have to wait for the budget on April 19th to see what comes out of that.
Yeah, and I think it's to link this back to the previous question. We know we have and we need strong immigration policies in order to evolve the Canadian economy in a way that provides stability for everybody. And in doing that, there is a very important component of foreign investment into the creation of new housing for new Canadians that is essential to how the housing system evolves as Canadian population and demographics change. And so it's not just a question of the source or the citizenship of the capital. It's also a question of where it's being spent and on what part of the housing sector it's being spent into. I think our government is being very clear, though, with the rights-based approach to housing and with the commitment to house Canadians. The Canadian housing market has to first and foremost serve the needs of people in Canada looking for shelter, and that is the prime driver. The other impacts that different parts of the housing system have on that primary goal are a constant area of measurement and concern. And while we look to adjust certain dynamics in real time to impact market dynamics, at the end of the day, the central goal of the government in the housing field is to make sure Canadians are housed, and that means that Canadians need to have priority access to Canadian homes. And from that central organizing perspective, we measure different policy options.
So thank you. With that, the only outstanding question is another one from a concerned citizen, and respecting your time, I'd like you to let me know whether we can proceed or shall we call the media section to a close.
Adam, it's your call.
I can talk housing all day.
Okay, let's go ahead.
Okay.
But the minister, there are other housing announcements to make in different parts of the country today, because we are doing
I
a
have
lot.
one more. Yeah,
There's a lot of good news to be shared across Canada this week.
absolutely.
So this is from Rob H., a concerned citizen. Many organizations, RBC, Bank of Montreal, think there is a speculative bubble already in housing. The government does not appear to be doing much about it. Will there be something in the April budget to cool prices?
So I again disagree with the premise of the question. We have been doing a lot with respect to housing, and I'm going to turn to my esteemed colleague Adam Vaughan to answer that.
There have been several different steps and applied in different ways. Most importantly, you've seen the stress test that the CMHC introduced a few years back. That was one of the measures that was introduced to try and manage the gap between price and investment and all the different things that are driving inflation in the housing sector. But I think the most important thing that evolved over the last couple of years in terms of our approach to housing, and you see it with the first-time homebuyers shared equity agreement program, and you're starting to see it talked about now in terms of how to manage the Canadian market as a series of sub-markets. And I think that this is one of the most important areas of policy exploration that needs to be done over the next few months and years ahead, is to understand that what might work in Vancouver may not work in Sudbury, may be absolutely wrong for St. John, but may also have an impact that's positive in Toronto. And so if we understand the housing market as a series of housing markets that may need different approaches at different times, I think we're going to see more effective policy evolve out of that kind of thinking. Historically, we've treated the entire Canadian housing market as one solid entity, and our sort of use of tools nationally as opposed to regionally has had disproportionate impacts, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, in comparative regions. And I think that we have to evolve our thinking around this because we have better data now, and because we're back in the leadership game at the federal level, and we're invested in making sure that we have better outcomes for Canadians in the housing sector. I think we have to start to explore those sorts of dynamics. And the good news is that in break from previous governments, this government is recognizing those detailed dynamics that are on the ground in different communities across Canada.
Thank you, and there are no further questions at this time.
Thank you. We took the picture, right? We took the photo?
We've taken the picture.
Yeah,
the picture's crystal clear. Good to see you again. Have a good weekend, everybody, and a safe rest of the afternoon.
Thank you, Mark. No.
Thanks, Mark, and see you.